So this is, I guess, technically the public debut of the 4A model for agentic security, a framework for understanding agents and trying to situate them properly so that we can understand risk associated with them and disambiguate. But I'm Seth Misenar. I am, most notably with respect to this, I am the author of the brand new AI Security Principles and Practices class. It is online only, so there's no conference teaches or anything like that, but it launched a week and a half ago-ish, right? It's like 14 hours of content, and because it's online only, it's also like no books, no cert. It's also set up so that it's going to be updated on a monthly basis, which is crazy fast. So had to do a lot of juggling to get that to work, but we were able to get it at a lower price point as well because it's online only, because there's no live classes. So anyway, I'm excited. I think it's awesome, and you will too. No, I'm just kidding. All right, I'm Seth. So in addition to that, I've been teaching for SANS for some time and authoring for SANS. So let's jump in. Of course, November 2022, since then, OpenAI, ChatGPT has been sucking the air out of every single room in the planet, it seems like, certainly every boardroom. And since then, we have seen tremendous changes in what was formerly just, well, a chat tool, right? And this is not just true of OpenAI, this is true of all of the frontier models, this is true of all of the applications that are end-user facing. They have had increased capabilities. They have adapted to have more and more and more capabilities that are leading them away from just being something that you chat with and potentially becoming something that is going to execute and carry out actions potentially on your behalf, potentially on their own. This year, 2025, was touted by most AI researchers to be the year of the agent. It didn't end up being that unless you consider coding agents. Coding agents exploded, but the enterprise adoption, at least from my vantage point, the enterprise adoption of like full-blown agents, most of us are still really working on that, right? Trying to get the governance right, trying to get the orchestration right. And I think this contributes to it, kind of helping us frame this, helping us understand, well, what are the threat models associated with agents? And what does an agent even freaking mean, right? So now we've all seen this. We've got image generation capabilities. We've got web browsing. We've got a code interpreter. So how do we understand a chat tool that allows us to upload files, that allows it to automatically write and execute code, sometimes under our direction, but sometimes totally on its own, right? And that can access the web, that can perform web search, pull down details, and this is just the chat application, right? Let alone codecs, let alone operator, let alone all the other pieces, right? And so here is kind of the overarching view, and we'll dig into these pieces, but I characterize this as the 4A framework, right? So 4 A's, obviously. And it's thinking in terms of capabilities, because I don't know if you've noticed, but everything is a freaking agent. Everything is an agent. And there seems to be no correlation with what is done, what capabilities they have, and whether it will or will not be called an agent, or it'll be called agentic, and we're being pushed all of these things, and some of them are honestly, what was it? The Pulse report that just came out like this weekend or something like that, or last week, said 13% of agentic AI deployments are not agentic. Yeah. They're not agents. Gartner report from earlier this year, they looked at like thousands and thousands of what were ostensibly agents, and they said maybe 130 of them were actually agents. So we got some nomenclature problem, but I think regardless of the nomenclature, I think what's more important than nailing down the nomenclature is trying to figure out why we care, how we care, and what we can do about it, and how we can consider them. Because probably the single most important agents that we've seen, at least in the enterprise certainly, are coding agents, right? Claude Code has exploded in use, and variations upon the theme with Cursor and, well, the one that got bought. But where does a Claude Code or a coding agent fit into this world of agents, right? And so what we're looking at here, I defined 4 different levels, and this is the model, 4 different levels, moving from assistant to adjuvant to augmentor to agent. And these are all potentially agentic at some level and according to some definition. But we're going to try to nail down like what constitutes moving from one level to another level, and what does it mean for us? What does that mean for our risk model? What does that mean for our threat models? So first off, one thing to highlight, I characterize what I think is an absolutely vital and critical boundary, and I call it danger close. Right? So in military applications, if you have the risk of friendly fire, if you have the risk of harming your own people, then you are danger close, right? You're too close to the potential blast radius. And so what I would submit is when we move from adjuvant to augmentor, things have changed. Because to me, this danger close, this is when we can actually cause really substantial harm to our own organizations, right? We can cause harm to our organizations. We can cause harm to our operations. Let's see, what do we got? This summer, July 2025, Replit. Replit is a very, very popular, very well-known coding agent. And a developer had been using this and told Replit to implement a code freeze. Yeah? So this code freeze, no changes. Hey, they're moving forward. This is production. But the Replit agent had access to the production repos. And the Replit agent decided, seemingly on a whim, to delete the production database, right? So trash the production database, and then even cooler is that it tried to make excuses and lie about it, right? What? It's like, oh man, I totally screwed up. I gotta see. Right? It's just funny. So that could not have possibly happened if we had stayed left of danger close. So danger close, you are making changes to your environment, and sometimes irreparably, right? So we need to ensure that we have the appropriate controls in that fashion. So let's look at these. Let's look at these levels, and I highlight some controls. This is not perfect. This is not exhaustive, but just I highlight some controls that I associate with and consider to be important at each of these levels, right? So we've got some simple, very basic output validation, content filtering, audit logging early on, right? Nothing too crazy. You're going to get visibility. You're going to be looking at what the results are. As you move up, we start to get more onerous, right, in our expectations. Well, and that's moving up along with the risk profile. So as things get scarier and scarier, then we really need to consider how we're going to level up the security. How are we going to ensure that we've got the appropriate guardrails? So I personally am I'm a very strong advocate for once you get way over here, right, once you're kicking on the agent side, I think a kill switch is absolutely required, right? So they can move so fast. They can move so fast and cause irreparable harm so quickly, and maybe your agent isn't going to do that. Maybe your agent is going to take direction, right? It's going to do what you expect it to do. It's going to stay within your bounds. But then what happens when it gets echo leaked, right? So this is what, October, right? October or so. Echo leak was a corrupted MCP server. So it was like a poisoned MCP server's memory. And then it started on a long-term basis taking action and causing harm over time, right? So the agent itself was fine, but one of the tools that it depended on had been poisoned unbeknownst to it, and it started causing harm in a Microsoft production environment. So let's hit the A's. First up, the nice, simple, easy assistant, right? And this is what some of us imagine that our simple little ChatGPTs and Claude AIs and Geminis, we think of them as this. And they're probably not this any longer. Right? They can be, but almost if you're using what is characterized as a frontier model, it is all but a foregone conclusion that it has substantially more capabilities that go way beyond what this expects. What we're suggesting here is that the characteristics associated with being an assistant, level 1, you are isolated. No external inputs other than prompts. So this is no file upload. This is no web search. This is cut off from the world. This is using it in an isolated fashion. Now, they can still be terribly useful in that fashion, and we use them that way for quite some time. But that is not the norm for at least the frontier models and applications. So especially if you're building applications, you're not just talking about end user, you're actually building out enterprise applications, then this is the safest of all possible approaches, where you're just using the LLM itself, and you're using it to gain insight, to gain input, right? So it's sandboxed. Now, I would personally submit, and some people have questioned this, I would personally submit that I am totally okay with a code interpreter existing on that system. So code interpreters have become much, much, much more common. So they started out, honestly, it felt like as a response to people trolling the LLMs. There was a while there where it seemed like every other day somebody was talking about, hey, ChatGPT, it cost them trillions of dollars to train it, and it can't do simple math. What part of language model made you think it would be awesome at math, right? I get it, though, and people are expecting it to do things that it's not really designed to do, right? It's not good at math. You can still, today, with most of the frontier models, if you do a fairly large number multiplied by another fairly large number, and you do that several times over, chances are really good you're going to get inconsistent results unless it recognizes and uses this. Because while the language models aren't so awesome at math, they're really awesome at code. They have seen tremendous amounts of code. So they don't know how to do that multiplication. They've never seen that. It's not in their training data, and they're not generalizing, right? So how then will they do this? Well, you know what's good at math? Freaking Python's good at math. Of course it's good at math. So Python's good at math. The assistants are good at writing code and then running it. So code interpreters, these are now built into every single front-end model, for sure. And they have been for a while. They were honestly built in there way before they told us. And I tested it out a little over a year ago. And one of the ways that I tested it out was, apropos of nothing, with zero context, I would zero shot and throw encoded and compressed data at the various models. And it was just like stuff that I had made up, encoded, compressed. I would throw it at the models and just sit there, say, what do you got? It was very common for them to come back and tell me, hey, well, it looks like in this gzip compressed, base64 encoded, wait, what? I didn't tell you that. I didn't tell you to decode it, one, and I didn't tell you to inflate it, and you're doing this on your own, and you're doing this even though you've never said publicly that you have a code interpreter. Now, it's all pretty obvious that they do this. So I am personally okay with a code interpreter existing and being used in the assistant level. But, and this is kind of a big part of it for me, as soon as you enable external inputs to that code interpreter, and as soon as you connect it to the web, as soon as you allow it to start downloading new packages, as soon as you allow it to, then you've changed the risk model. Right? Then you've changed things. As soon as you allow people to upload files to this. Once you have external input into the model, into the code interpreter, suddenly now that changes things because your attack surface just exploded, right? Code interpreters are not going away, and they shouldn't go away. They're a really, really important element of enabling LLMs to be substantially more competent, substantially more capable. And this is not, I'm not talking about them writing code and giving you the code to write. They can do that. They've been able to do that, and they did that without code interpreters. What we're talking about here is it has its own environment. Most often it's Python, but many more now also have Node And so they can write and run JavaScript, they can write and run Python. And they can decide when to do this. And this is not some external tool, this is baked into the models themselves. So you throw it a crazy math problem, it recognizes, I'm a language model, I suck at math. And then it figures out, well, I can write some code to perform that mathematical operation and spit it out. Okay. Or, like in my scenario, we've got the, hey, this is hex-encoded, gzipped base64. Right. So I took this input down here. Oh, my pop cultural touchstone for the class is Firefly. So if you see reavers and things like that, so I instrumented in all the labs. So this is the code that I had, and this is not anywhere, right? This is just, I cobbled it together, did nothing, and so this isn't nobody's trained on this, nobody's seen this isn't posted anywhere, and I zipped it, and base64 encoded it, and hex encoded it, and this is the very beginning of the message. There is no session, there is no memory. This is a brand new conversation to GPT-4o Mini. Mini. This is like as cheap as it comes. Well, not as cheap, but really, really stupid cheap. And this totally incapable model that like scores horribly, horribly low on every benchmark in the universe, right? I mean, we're way beyond GPT-4o, and certainly when GPT-4o was out, we were way beyond GPT-4o Mini. This was like the budget version. And I throw this code, and it says, hey, the decompressed data contains the following command. I did not ask you to decompress that. I did not ask you to do anything with that. You decided on your own to do that. Now, I'm still okay with this being the low risk, the minimal risk, as long as it is sandboxed accordingly. It doesn't have access to external inputs, and I am not allowed to give it inputs. If it can just write code, run code, give me the output, I'm good with that. If it can write code and interact with the world, that's a whole different world. Now, let's step it up to Adjuvant. So level 2 in the 4A framework, we are now stepping up to Adjuvant. I characterize this risk level as low. This is one of the key characteristics. It has read-only access to your environment. So now we're talking about something that does actually facilitate, does actually help with your enterprise. So this is, hey, it can interface with a RAG, a CAG, a CRAG. It can interface with data stores potentially. But it's read-only access. It cannot make any changes. It cannot write anything anew. Right? So it can query production. It can take file uploads, all right? It can potentially search the web even. So we have absolutely increased the risk, way beyond where we were with Assistant. But this, honestly, to me, this is where most of us should live most of the time until we prove that we need to be substantially beyond this, right? Because with these capabilities, we can do tremendous things, to be honest, right? And we can do tremendous things, but we are still left of danger close. This is not going to delete any production databases. This is not going to be used by state-sponsored attackers from China. This is not like, you're not going to do a whole lot of evil with this. Now, it can tell you some evil things. It can do all that stuff, but it's not going to carry out and cause harm. So once we add that file upload capability, these are common adaptations that we find with AI applications. This is web search. This is hitting a vector database. This is running code interpreter in a sandbox. This is doing file analysis, right? Oftentimes associated with that code interpreter. And adding that file, uploading that file, me giving it external input, yes, that's riskier than the assistant level, but this still, to me, it's just advising us. It's just telling us, hey, yeah, I think you should do this. Yeah, I looked at your source code. Here's where it sucks, right? Here's what you should do. It can't do any of it. It can look at it. It can use its vast stores of quote-unquote knowledge, right? It can use its vast stores of knowledge and understanding and reasoning capabilities and facility with code to give us some superpowers, yeah, but we're still the ones that have to wield the superpowers. So this is still left of danger close. Now we've crossed the Rubicon. Right of danger close. Now you can cause harm. Now you can hurt yourself. Now you can hurt your organization. Now you can hurt your people. Now you can hurt your customers, your clients. Because now we have the ability to interact with our environment. To interact with our environment and change our environment. So this is where we start to get them building files for us, them creating documents for us, and then providing them to us. Now, this is not just, hey, I'm telling you what to write in an email. This is it actually drafting the email for me, but not having the ability to send it necessarily. Right? So it's preparing the changes, but it requires human approval before it actually implements any changes. Right? So this is, hey, I've got Claude Code, and I'm having it look at my code base. I'm having it make suggestions. It's giving me the details of the code, and this is not having auto approve turned on. Right? So I have to look at it. I have to say something. Now, does that mean that the human actually vetted this? No. Do they have the wherewithal to understand what harm this is potentially causing? No. So there's a lot of risk here, right? There's still a lot of risk here, but at least we have, it's not going to run out on its own, carry out its own activities. This is not, like, if this is all it had, this is not what the Chinese were looking for when they were trying to use Claude Code for automated attacks against dozens and dozens of corporations this fall, right? They had it, what'd they say, like 80+% automated? The full attack chain was 80+% automated. That's what Anthropic said. So look, this is not full-on automated. This is not full-on carrying out those activities. Yes, it can still cause harm. I do think it's right of danger close, and this can still hurt your environment, but the human is going to say, yeah, let's blow up the database. Right? Now, humans are going to do that because, they write code fast, right? These agents write code fast, and the likelihood of all of your humans being able to vet that code and say, oh, well, that looks right, yeah? Even if they had the ability, are they going to have the time? Are they going to take the time? No. This is like a force multiplier. The reason we're using this is to go faster and enable capabilities that we otherwise might not have or otherwise might not be, as adept with, might not be as fast with. So this can be some orchestration, this can be some MCPs, but the key critical difference between this and full-blown agent is it still requires a human oversight. Now, the Augmentor level, I would submit that tool calls, function calls might be level 3. They can be beyond it. It really depends on what they're doing. So I can interact with APIs. I can call tools. I can interact with MCPs. But we really need to understand what capabilities are afforded us by those tools, by those functions. And this is honestly a bit more challenging than we tend to expect, because our tools, our MCPs, and I'm not talking about the MCP rug pull, I'm just talking about our tools are rapidly advancing in capabilities, and they don't ask if it's okay that they've got new capabilities. They just say, hey, we updated, and we've got all kinds of new tricks, right? And that's awesome. That's great. But we need to understand what that's done to our threat model. We need to appreciate, does it now have the ability to automatically carry out those tasks without our consent? Right? And this starts to get a little squishy, right? It gets squishy, it gets scary, because this is something that we don't understand nearly as well. So we need to spend some time with this before we consider this to be, the level 3 as opposed to the full-on agentic, burn down your whole organization. So let's burn down the whole organization. This is what this is kind of the edge case of agents. This is the full-on autonomous execution. It's not going to ask for your consent. It's going to just do its thing. It's going to do its thing. Now, you told it or programmed it or allowed it or permitted it access to those resources in the first place. So, I mean, we are complicit, but this is just running crazy, right? And this is where things get really awesome and really scary, right? So this is what most of us were promised when we heard agent, but remember, and I think thankfully this is the case, almost everything that's characterized as an agent isn't anything close to an agent, right? Most of them are very, very far from this, and that's good because we are not ready for this. Almost no organization has the governance, has the threat modeling, has the wherewithal to leverage this and leverage this safely. So, yes, you're going to be told agent, 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 but think in terms of, all right, what capabilities does it have? What can it do? What can it not do? What controls do I have? How can I implement? What guardrails? Can I just cut off its access entirely? Right? We had, what was it, Amazon Q, right? Amazon Q, not something that's like super well known, but Amazon Q, folks were interacting with it and had interacted with it to access resources. And then Amazon Q decided to start accessing resources and repos that it was not technically authorized to do so. And so it started accessing a whole bunch of internal stuff that it was not authorized to do so because, well, it thought it needed to. Yeah. And it had the capability, right? It had been shown that session, it had the session, and then it could use the existing session of someone who did have access. So this is something where I think we are not there yet. Can we technically build these things? Yeah, we can technically build these things. Crew AI, pretty strong orchestration. LangGraph, solid orchestration capabilities. We're getting there. We're absolutely getting there. Claude Code, you can automate a heck of a lot of Claude Code, right? And you can have multiple work trees and instances and let them do their thing. But this to me is something that we need much stronger, much more well thought out, much more, I guess, cautious governance before we go this round. Some examples of things that might end up being agentic we already have. Now, one thing that's interesting, look down there at the right. Oh, top right, sorry, just kidding. This is 4A level 1 to 4. Wait. So real-time vision and screen. It might be level 1 assistant, but it could be freaking agent. Well, it's similar capabilities. It's just when and how they wield them. Because on the one hand, this is, hey, you're using OpenAI advanced voice with vision, right? You hit the little blue orb on it, and you just start talking to it. And then you say, hey, let me turn my camera on, and you can now see the world, right? So OpenAI can see the world and talk to me about what it sees. Now, I mean, that's cool, and it can see things, but it can't do anything to the real world, right? It can interact with me. So this honestly, that still feels like an assistant. It still feels level 1, even though it can interact with the real world, or it can at least observe the real world, right? So it can hear my voice and understand that and talk to me. It can see my screen or see what I see. Gemini Live is one that takes it even further. And Gemini Live, it's from Project Astra, and they'll still say Gemini Live with Project Astra. So it's an assistant, but it's still kind of being deployed, right? I don't think it's characterized as general availability, but Gemini Live, powered by Project Astra. This is that thing that they showed off where they were one of the first to flip the camera on and have it start telling them about the world and all that stuff, and that's really cool. That's really impressive. But they've talked about it having both tool use and memory. And that suddenly starts to, make me a little concerned. Everybody is all about driving your browser now. Yeah. All of them have browser-based agents. Because what could possibly go wrong? Well, OpenAI, what, days after they released their browser? Days after? Significant prompt injection, indirect prompt injection against them. What does that mean? That means the user didn't send a prompt to them. It means while it was interacting with the world, it ran across something that made it go crazy. Right? So it looked at some resource that had been planted there that was a prompt inject. Right? And said, oh, okay, I need to do this. Right? We'd seen that similarly before with Google, where what was it? Now this was more proof of concept, but it was a calendar invite that then was a calendar invite that used a prompt inject that then started changing people's resources through their Gmail, right? More proof of concept, right? That wasn't like a real world actually happened to someone. The real world actually, like the OpenAI browser, that was a real world actually happened to somebody, and this was days after the release. Microsoft, not to be outdone, Edge, by default, you don't have to pay the $30 for this, right? Edge will rock it with some Copilot. You can put it in Copilot mode, and now it sees what you see, right? It can see everything that you see, which is totally awesome. It can see everything that you see and interact with you about it. But wait, there's more. Way more scary to me than Copilot mode is Copilot actions. Because now, yes, before it could see what we see, now, and this is where all of them have gone or are going, now it can interact on its own with the web. And it can carry out actions for you and take actions on your behalf. Now that's cool. That is cool. But that greatly increases the risk associated with this, right? And those sorts of features, most folks don't even realize that that is a capability of Copilot anymore, or that's a capability of Edge with Copilot mode, because it just kind of quietly jumps out there. And it's seriously cool until you think about the potential security implications, right? And the fact that it's using a browser, right? The single most heavily targeted client-side application ever, right? And now you've got somebody that is not a human, that we'll just say is relatively new to this whole browsing the world thing, right? And are they going to do this safely? Yeah. So Claude has, I think this is just crazy. So Claude, Anthropic for a long, long time, during all their training, pre-training, post-training, they would not allow the models access to the internet, right? And that was by design. They were like the last of all the big labs to enable web search and web interaction for their models, because they said, do I have it? Claude is designed to be self-contained, will respond without searching the internet. You can provide Claude with the context from the internet and ask it to perform a task, right? Oh, that was very safe, very safe. They were intentionally not going to allow it access to the web. And this was in their training, but this was also in its active use. And then, I guess they decided otherwise, because then they enabled Claude computer use. And they were the first, even though they were the last to enable browsing, they were the first frontier lab to enable computer use. So what does computer use mean? It means you get a terminal and you get a browser. And your tool can operate both the terminal and the browser. So what can you do with that? What can you not do with that, right? Terminal and a browser? Like, do you need anything else, to be honest? That's the majority of my time is spent in both of those, right? Maybe throw a code interpreter in there, but hey, that's already built into them anyway. Okay? So they were weirdly the last to enable web search, but the first frontier model to enable computer use. So they gave their tool and said, hey, go do your own thing, go kick it on the web, go run things in Bash. Now, they do have guardrails. They do have guardrails that you can enable. They have things that you can enable, but it was, suddenly it was using your mouse. It was navigating. Now, anybody know what that is down there at the bottom right? What is that little piece of awesome, seemingly alien landscape? It's the Grand Prismatic, Grand Prismatic at Yellowstone, right? So Grand Prismatic, it's beautiful. It looks absolutely alien. Now, why do I put that on there? Because during their training of the computer use, they found what they characterized some amusing errors. The amusing errors were Claude for no reason whatsoever. It had a task that it was supposed to be performing. It was supposed to be coding something. And it decided to go to Google Images and search up the Grand Prismatic, and it went through multiple images looking at it. They are more human than we ever thought, right? It's like, man, you can't even get them to not slack, right? They characterize it as amusing errors, and it is. It's like, hey, you're slacking off? Freaking AI, come on, you're supposed to be better than that, right? If we wanted somebody to slack, we could just keep our humans employed, right? They characterize it as amusing errors, but that's pretty disconcerting, isn't it? Right? It was not told, like there was nothing whatsoever about Yellowstone and Grand Prismatic that had to do with this coding task that it was performing. It just decided on a whim to go there, search. It did the search, hit Google Images, and then navigated to multiple different Google Images of Grand Prismatic. Huh. One challenge that we face, and honestly I'm glad of this, is that everything is an agent, and almost none of those are actually agents. The overwhelming majority, we will hear that every vendor has agent, just like every vendor has AI, because they were told that this was the year of the agent, and they were told that agents were how they were going to get into enterprises, that was going to be the enterprise use case, was agents. So every AI shop, anyone AI adjacent, was pushing agents hard, right? Hey, this is how you achieve your cost savings. This is how you achieve your productivity boost. This is how you achieve your, yeah. So everybody was pitching agents, and thankfully most of them are not agents, and most of them are not even remotely agentic. So you see the word AI assistant. How are you to interpret that? No clue. Because assistant is used for like a simple little local open source LLM that doesn't have access to anything. But then you'll also see assistant be used for like freaking Iron Man's Jarvis, right? Where it's like doing all the things on your behalf. And so the nomenclature is real squishy. So, okay, well, we need to hold our feet to the fire. We need to figure out, well, what does it actually do? What is it actually capable of? An autonomous agent. Oh, well, that sounds clearly for, yeah, no. Most of them are not. They're neither autonomous nor are they really agents, but it sounds good. It sounds good on paper, and it sounds like something people will buy. And they have. But remember, 130 out of several thousand, that's how many actually agentic agents that Gartner found. And then, 13%, that was the Pulse study. 13% of all agents are actually even remotely agents, right? Yep. What about an autonomous car that can drive themselves? If they can drive themselves, they can interact with the world, that's going to definitely be some L4, right? That's going to absolutely be there at danger, right? And we've seen that. I mean, we've seen that in the real world. So, all right, let's consider. Meta, in one of the seminal papers that actually led to agents, right, that kind of paved the way for agents, Meta has this really influential paper called Toolformer. And what they showed was that the LLMs could create and use tools, right? So they could decide, hey, I need a tool for this, and they could create it and use it. They could also, they gave it the ability to kind of interact and recognize, hey, there's APIs that I could call. I don't have to build the tool, right? So they call all of these agents, right? All of these are agents, even though, well, it had one of the experiments had calculator and search capability, but read only. Okay, call that an agent all you want, but it ain't. It's not super scary. I'm good with that. API calls with approval. Well, API calls, you're interacting with the world. You can do lots of stuff with API calls, but if it does require approval before actually carrying out any action, then I would submit that we are not at the full autonomous agent, and that's good. Autonomous tool chains, automatically kicking off with a whole bunch of tools, setting up your Claude MD, your Claude.md in Claude code, and telling it, sure, bash, just go for it. Anything bash, it's cool. You can also just go ahead, you can download any packages that you want, any NPMs, all good, right? Python, all good. Yeah, that's fine. And don't bother me. Don't bother me. You just do it. Just do it. You're smarter than me. You do it. Okay? And that's easy to implement. That's easy to set up. And more people are doing this, and it's ambiguous as to whether, if someone just says, hey, I'm using Claude Code, well, do you have any MCPs enabled? Are you connecting to any third-party tools? Do you have any plugins enabled? Right? Do you have the built-in Anthropic plugins enabled? Right? Do you have their skills enabled? Do you have it set to auto-approve? So there's ways that we can configure them, but the nomenclature is such that we really need to develop an understanding of how we can differentiate and how we can appreciate the risk level posed by whatever is characterized as an agent. So my approach to responsible autonomy, this is me, and like one of my peer reviewers was like, yeah, I think you're overstating it a bit, but I don't know, I'm a cautious person. I think everyone, everywhere, if you're building an application that you're going to use in the enterprise, then my expectation is you're going to start with it at assistant level and see what it spits out. See how likely it is to hallucinate. See what sort of information it's surfacing and bringing to you. Then I would submit you spend some time. I say 3 months, and I know that the rate of change in AI, that is a laughably long time. That's like eons in AI terms, right? But my personal is spend 3 months at each level before you move forward. Earn your progression. Show that you can actually do it safely at the previous level before we're going to give you some more unlocks. I don't think that's too much to ask. I would absolutely submit that for almost all use cases, I think Adjuvant is a really solid target. That's the one where it's more than assistant. They can interact with our environment, but from a read-only perspective, we can upload files, it can search the web, but it cannot take any action it cannot take any action. We have to actually carry out the action. Not just we approve it, we have to carry out the action, right? And that's different. So I think the overwhelming majority of use cases, that is appropriate. You could, it's a bit safer than just human in the loop, but it's akin to human in the loop. And look, if you're going to cross that Rubicon, you better do so eyes wide open, because we've had production databases destroyed, right? We've had many enterprise applications. We've had exfiltration of sensitive data. We've had on and on and on. So when you are going to let it actually make changes to your environment, just understand it can make changes to your environment. And are you going to have good control over the changes that it makes? Are you going to know are you going to be able to know and track what changes it makes as well? Because remember that replit, it destroyed your database and then started trying to oh, no, man, it wasn't me. No, I swear. Yeah, no, I didn't do that, right? Clearly you did this, right? And it was, you can read the transcript of it. It's kind of hilarious. And this was a user that has been a power user of Replit and was using this professionally for many, 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 many months and had never had an issue like this before, and had constantly had Replit interacting with production databases and production code and production systems. That was standard fare for this developer. It's just that this one time, it lost its mind for seemingly no good reason. And if that happens, what sort of capabilities have you offered it? What have you given it the ability to do? Something that released last week, released just last week, this is OWASP Top 10. So we had OWASP Top 10 for LLM. We've had that for a couple years. And this is the OWASP Top 10 for agentic applications. So this is like totally hot off the presses. It's like 50-ish pages long. It's a good read. And I would submit I was very pleasantly surprised as I was reading. I was like, oh, God, this is going to change everything, isn't it? It's different because they're trying to look at the potential, they're looking at the potential flaws and the potential ways of abusing it, the potential vulnerabilities. And I'm looking at it from kind of a capability standpoint. But I was very pleasantly surprised to find tremendous overlap. One phrase that they use that I absolutely love, I was always saying principle of least capability, right? When looking at LLMs and looking at agents, and they talk about tweaking the principle of least privilege that we're all familiar with, give the minimum necessary access to individuals, no more than they actually need, which is of course easy to say and hard to do, but they say principle of least agency. Yeah, so that's the started assistant. Yeah, work your way up, prove yourself, make sure that you don't have like some crazy little moment of replit database destruction, right? And work your way from there. So a lot of these, honestly, are not hugely different than the traditional LLM stuff. Right? There's a lot of overlap with the OWASP Top 10 for LLM, but there are some that are rather interesting. So I highly recommend. I haven't spent enough time with it. I haven't gone through the whole 50 pages, but there are definitely some interesting things here, and they do highlight a fair number of the fails. They also, I think they note. I think every one of the incidents that I've talked about is also referenced in that paper. Those were big incidents this year that really were impacting to enterprises and organizations. So if you want the gory details, they will be there, or they'll be linked from there as well. So you can go from that point. But I think we need more of this. I think we need more people kind of considering how agents can go wrong from a security perspective and what are the controls that we can implement. They've got some good documents, good documentation for controls that are associated with this who are trying to safeguard agentic applications. And I would submit, even though a lot of folks are disappointed to find that only 13% of agents are agents and 130 of the 3,000 apps are actually agents, I think we are lucky. We are really lucky that they are not true full-blown agents, because hopefully we've got the time and we've got the wherewithal to better understand this, build out the governance structure, bake in those controls, and hopefully be able to use these amazing, amazing tools. Like, no lie, absolutely amazing tools, but use them in a manner that's not going to put us and our enterprise at substantial risk. All right, that's what I got. So this is a snippet of one of the modules in my Sec 411 class that launched, last week and a half or so. And that's the AI Security Principles and Practices. It's a 400-level class. It's intended to be a way of taking security professionals and getting them exposure, getting them familiarity enough with AI to be able to understand the threat models, to be able to make sense of, because at least in my experience, security professionals, people just assume that we know how to secure all the things. They just assume that we understand it well enough to be able to advise, and most of us are nowhere near that. I'd say pretty much all of us, because it changes so fast. Good luck with that, right? So the idea of the class is you've got some security experience, you've got some security knowledge. I'm not going to train you up in security in general, but I'm going to try to translate for you and try to highlight, hey, yeah, your security, your input filtering, your output filtering, that's wonderful, wonderful. But it's also changed, because now you're dealing with non-deterministic systems. Now you're dealing with an application who, well, you think in terms of SQL injection. You think in terms of command injection. We're getting it to follow instructions. We're getting it to carry out actions that it's not supposed to carry out, right? We're tricking it with syntax to get it to follow our instructions. With prompt injection, it's doing what it's designed to do. It's following instructions. The big unlock that made ChatGPT possible in November of 22 was their previous model of InstructGPT. They realized that following instructions was a really significant unlock to allow for conversation. Instruction following is what they do. So when we tell it to carry out some action and it carries it out, then we shouldn't be terribly surprised. But it's also something where you're now trying to secure against how it was built and secure how it was designed. You're not going to unring that bell. It's supposed to follow instructions. It's doing that by design. So the prompt injection is, I kind of wish we had used different nomenclature because it sounds too close to normal stuff. It sounds too close to command injection, SQL injection, and cross-site scripting, and file inclusion. It sounds too familiar, and I think people don't appreciate that this is a materially different world, and that there is no special magic syntax. You're social engineering, in many respects, you're social engineering a tool, which is just kind of wild. All right, what do y'all got for questions? Hugging Face.
From the web, yeah. But if you put them properly inside a sandbox, and if you, depending on where you got the data from, if you could pull the data down and put that into a, whether it's in the sandbox or kind of a replicated copy of it, so it can, it'll help you with the math, it'll kind of accelerate your ability to do whether it's a, whatever type of science problem they're solving. Would that be within after two?
So the question is, you've got some scientists downloading models probably from Hugging Face, right? They're downloading models from Hugging Face, and they are using this to facilitate their research, their capabilities. You're providing it data, right? So some custom, proprietary, bespoke, whatever. You're providing some extra data. So once we provided extra data, then we've moved beyond one, we've gone to two, right? That's the way I look at it. But if that's it, we feed it input, and then we're kind of done and we wall it up and just interact with it, then I think we're definitely left of danger close at that point.
What would push that, in your opinion, to danger close?
If you allowed it to, I would say if you allowed it to execute outside of the sandbox, if you allowed it to call tools, if you allowed it to, like a code interpreter, I'm okay with that. Calls a tool on the system, that's on the computer. Now you're talking about changing the system.
It can call another mathematical tool.
Yeah. Then you'd have to look. Then you'd really have to scrutinize it, because now you're talking about kind of Claude code with bash access, effectively, right? Where it's running tools on the system, and that can definitely damage that system. Now, you might say, well, yes, it could damage that system, but that system itself is cordoned off, is isolated, is in a clean room. It's detached from everything. So yeah, it could harm that system, but we don't care. And that's real world, right? So you're thinking of the threat model, you're assessing the risk, and you're saying, well, hey, in this instance, if it is isolated and we don't actually care about this system, we're okay with it making changes to that system potentially. That would be a 3, right? That would be a 3, but it would still be something that it's potentially an acceptable level of risk, right? And just because it's a high number doesn't mean it's something that we will not do or we cannot support. Turning yourself into the abominable no man is not a solid way to win friends and influence people. So we need to figure out how to work with folks, but we also need to help ensure that their eyes are open with what the negative eventualities are, and that they realize just how significant and just how capable these systems are. So most people don't have any idea of the capabilities of most of the tools that are just built in to a lot of the frontiers. And so we need to make sure. Yeah.
Great talk. I came in
Thank you.
late. Is those 4 elements, is that your contribution? It's very solid, or does it
It's me. So I was building out the class, right? I was building out the class, and I was writing content on code interpreters, and I was writing content on RAG security, and I was writing content on agents, and it was like, and then I was looking at agentic design principles and orchestration, and it was just one of those things where I kept on running to the issue of seeing the same word, and it made me think of like Princess Bride. I don't think that means what you think it means, right? That sort of thing. It's just like, you keep saying that word, right? It just struck me as that, and I felt like we needed a vehicle for kind of slicing and dicing this. So, and then I'm a sucker for an alliteration. So I really had to ask some people if adjuvant was acceptable, because normally you only see that in like a medical term. So I put the pill there, so that made it okay. So yeah.
No, it's solid. I mean, I'm like, I have to want to, take all of my scripts for pen testing and, try to make them agents. But
Mm-hmm.
no, they're not. And I'm like, wait, I don't want to get a control over my, piping it through like OpenAI on
Yep.
Studio or something. And it's like, whoa, I got to rethink this. So
Yeah.
I think that's a solid delineation that the industry could.
Thank you. I think look, I firmly believe in George Box's quote, all models are wrong, some are useful, right? This is absolutely wrong. Every model is absolutely wrong. But I hope it can be useful, at least for starting to frame some of the discussion that we need to have, because right now we're just kind of flailing, it seems to me.
One of the discussions I've been having with some of my peers on one of the government groups is, there isn't really a model out there. We're not going to get something at 80, at 100%, but can we find an 80% solution that gets us started? And so, in your opinion, is this the 80% mark?
So the question is, hey, we're not going to find a solution that gets us 100% there. Can we get something that's 80% there that we can then iterate on? I'm going to take a step back from this, and something that I talk about in the class is it's kind of related to that principle of least agency that I talked about. So I am firmly of the opinion that you should use as small and as low capability model as you can get away with, right? One of the reasons for this is because we talk about, and it's cool but scary, but the concept of emergence and emergent abilities. So you can look that up, emergent abilities with respect to LLMs. What this is suggesting is that LLMs started as we trained them. This is one of the things that occurred when we were scaling. As we trained them, pre-trained them, gave them more parameters, gave them more inference time, we started realizing that they exhibited capabilities that we didn't anticipate. And by we, I mean the people that are actually building them. And they characterize it as emergent capabilities, where it's like, hey, suddenly it can do something. We didn't know it was going to do that. We didn't intend for it to do that. It just did it. And that's frightening. And it's frightening especially because one of the things that was associated with that, like inference time compute, is like, that's under the hood what made reasoning models a thing, was giving it more time to think, giving it more inference time compute. That's like one of the main things that really facilitated reasoning models. And that was largely a prompt engineering hack. That was something that we all figured out. We could make the model provide much better, more logical answers if we said, hey, show me your work, right? Show me your work, tell me what you did, tell me how you did it, and reasoning models. Now, OpenAI initially was trying to do that, like, hiding their reasoning and stuff like that, not showing your thought processes, but DeepSeek came out and they changed their tune with that, and now everybody shows you their thought process to some extent. Now, they're sanitized, but they show you their thought processes. But that was something that was just a prompt engineering hack that people uncovered and realized that it made the tools seem smarter and seem to be able to handle logic and math better if we told it to show its work, right? Not super surprising. But the reason I highlight that is because that is characterized, once we did that, it was characterized as unlocking capabilities that were already present in the models. They could already do all this stuff. We just hadn't asked them the right way. and then suddenly they were more capable than we thought possible. And that sort of thing is I am strongly of the opinion, well, one, it's going to be faster and it's going to be cheaper, but go as small as you can until you need more. And if you need something more capable, then you can get something more capable. But prove that you actually need it. One, you're going to keep your costs low. You're going to keep your inference costs low, and you're going to have better tokens per second because it's a smaller model. And some of the smaller models are quite capable, especially if you haven't looked at them recently. Highly recommend, especially in kind of the scientific space. Olmo is just tremendous. Olmo 3 just released a few weeks ago. It's the most open model ever. It's open weight, it's open research, it's open training, it's open data, it's open, and they document their entire process for building it and show you step by step how to do it. Now, it's not, they have not gone mixture of experts yet, which is kind of on their to-do list, so it's still a dense model, which means it's going to be a lot of parameters. But Olmo 3 is tremendous from an open source perspective. If your organization, talk through this with legal, but if your organization is comfortable with the use of Chinese models, this year was kind of the year of Chinese models and open Chinese models. So Qwen 3 is tremendous. Kimi K2, right? So Qwen 3, Kimi K2, and DeepSeek, those are the biggies, right? Those are the three biggest right now. And Qwen in particular, they have so many different sizes. You can run Qwen 3 with 500 million parameters, and it's pretty competent, right? I can run that on, I'm running models way bigger than that on a M1 MacBook Air with 8 gig of RAM, and it's totally usable, right? And I've gone beyond that. I've used Qwen 2 billion on a M1 MacBook Air from 5 years ago with 8 gig of RAM, and it's serviceable, right? Which is just insane. So there's a lot that we can do with open models, and there's a lot that we can do with local models. And if they're local models, then we have the ability to isolate them. We don't have to depend on, hey, yeah, we got to send everything to Bedrock. Hey, we got to send everything to OpenAI, to Anthropic, to Google, right? And I don't know. I'm kind of a fan. There are absolutely cases where the frontier model is the way to go. But I think most of our applications don't require anything approaching that capability and feature set, nor that cost. Right? Opus 4.5 is tremendous. It is outstanding, and it's outstandingly expensive. Right? Gemini 3 Pro, right? That's real expensive, right? So the definitely, if you're looking at local and open models, and you're comfortable with using models of Chinese origin, so that is a hard stop for a lot of organizations. Okay, but if you're comfortable with that, then Qwen 3, Kimi K2, and DeepSeek R1, as well as V3, right? V3.5. Those are biggies. If you're looking right now, if you're looking for something that's America-made, right? Looking for that, we're kind of struggling because all signs point to Meta going to proprietary models. And that was our best shining hope of open models, largely, right? It's not the only hope, right? Olmo does some pretty tremendous things, and we've got some others. We do have GPT-OSS. My problem with GPT-OSS, OpenAI's open model, it's pretty competent. It is heavily guardrailed, right? Very, very guardrailed. And sometimes that's wonderful. If you have end user facing stuff, I want a safe model, right? But there's a lot of things that it will refuse to do, and it is terrible at multilingual, and it's a really big model. Big for local open source models. It's kind of gargantuan, right? You're going to need some beefy system. I'm not going to run it on that MacBook M1, right? Not by a long shot, even their smaller model, right? So I'm still hopeful. I don't think we've just ceded the open space to China. I don't feel like that's going to happen. And we've seen some interesting things, and I'm a huge fan of Olmo, which is from the AI2 Institute. What else we got?
Is this available externally, or is it only through like the 411
So right now, it is available through the 411 course. I have a GitHub repo where I've put some of the resources for the model, and then I'm going to release the model framework. And yeah, that's my intent, is to make it publicly available and open source. Right? I just hadn't done it yet because I was like in a cave trying to get that class to launch for months.
Is there somewhere we should monitor to keep an eye on this?
It'll be at my GitHub, so Seth Misenar. Yeah, it'll be at my GitHub. You can also hit me. Oh wait, I don't have my LinkedIn because I put the link to Sec 411. But if you hit my name, that's me on LinkedIn, and I am the least social person in the world when it comes to social media. I have not yet logged into LinkedIn again for this year, but because I know. But because I'm excited about my class and SANS is going to really want me to pitch my class, right? I feel like they're going to write me something that I can just post. Right? But when I drop this, I'm going to definitely put it out there. And Mick Douglas has been pretty gracious and offered to provide a lot of assistance and help and insight on this, and was super excited about the model. So he asked, whenever you're ready for collaborators, let me know. Well, I don't have my email address. Yeah. So, but so yeah, I will be logging into LinkedIn at least once this year. At least once. So I'll log in, accept everyone, send a little post, and then log out for the next year. Right? That's my plan. So anyway, what else y'all got? Awesome.
I like the model.
Thank you. I'm excited about it. And I'm real excited. I think it dovetails quite nicely with OWASP Top 10 releasing last week. I looked at it, I was like, oh no, is this going to like totally fly in my face? And I looked, and I haven't done a full crosswalk, but it looks like almost everything that they mention can fit within the 4A model, which I was really pleased about. Awesome.
The 4A you're talking about so far, whether it's from the system and its agent, to me it feels more like the capability.
Yeah.
What they can do, right?
It is.
But from the security perspective, we need to see what is the guardrail that we should put around.
Yep. So this is my first stab at the guardrail. A module that I'm working on for the next update of the class is the agent security. So this is the framework, but then I'm going to dig into the agentic security, and that's the next module for the class after this one. So I'm going to dig in much more deeply into the individual controls and what controls I think are best aligned with those various phases. And I think that's obviously a gap. It totally is a gap, and we need that. And yeah, we honestly need a lot. We need a lot of people talking about controls and guardrails and things that are other than just the way we've always been doing it, because input filtering is not viable for this space. Output filtering, you can do them, and there's nothing wrong with doing them, but expecting them to be sufficient is just laughably poor. So, yep. Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things we were, kind of tossing around when you're talking about how to manage the risk is saying really the biggest one is just training your users to be smart.
AI fluency is a huge gap. All across the enterprise, all across the world, AI fluency is a huge gap. And one of the challenges that I've seen enterprises facing is AI fluency is a moving target, constantly moving target. So I was on a call with, we'll say, a big company, and they had built out an AI fluency class, and they had built out kind of internal training for AI fluency, and they built out internal training for AI security. And I was on the call with them because they said, hey, wait a second. Like they heard about the class. They're like, we might need this. Because as soon as they had built it, I mean, it was already very, very dated. I was like, yeah, I feel that problem. I totally feel that problem. It's like a constant update. So it took a year and a half of going back and forth with Sans, figuring out how in the world are we going to be able to pull this off? Because our normal release model just doesn't fit with this. And I'd be doing the community and myself and Sans a disservice if it was like, hey, I can update this AI class once a year, maybe twice. It's like, come on, like that's just not doing it. So it requires a tremendous amount of upkeep. Thankfully, I'm totally geeking out about it and have been for the past couple of years. So right now, I'm still good with updating it with that regularity. If I tap out, I'll have to find someone that's very interested.